Lyndsi, thank you so much for joining us today. As we begin, can you say a few words about your current role and what's in your purview?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and I appreciate the opportunity. So, I am currently the Chief Marketing and Communications Officer at Celerium, which is a cyber defense company. And so, we run the gamut of everything from digital advertising, lead generation, demand generation, event marketing, everything kind of falls under that. And I also work very closely with our customer success and sales teams
Mhm.
just to make sure that the customer journey from the very first time they learn about Celerium through getting a demo, through becoming a customer, and everything is very seamless and all fits under our brand and our values, because we have very specific values as a company, including working towards excellence in everything that we do, being respectful of everyone that we work with, working with integrity, and also just really having a big focus on serving our customers and serving them well.
I understand. I understand. And how did you get into cybersecurity marketing?
That's a great question. So, definitely was not a direct path. And to be honest, it really wasn't even intentional.
Hmm.
I got started actually in political campaigns and issue advocacy
Hmm.
campaigns coming out of the master's program I did at Georgetown University, where I earned a master's in communication, culture, and technology. So, technology has always been part of my interests and part of my career path, but it's just taken different forms because that's a very broad topic. And it was very interesting because back in the day, then, the big focus was how do political candidates or businesses use this new thing called social media. So, I got my career started kind of helping brands understand how to use something like a Facebook page. Back then they were called Facebook fans, right? And then from there, I worked in a lot of different industries. So, online media and publishing, financial services, helping startups generate capital and raise money. And then I also managed a video production company,
Hmm.
did a lot of videos to help tell brand stories. And Celerium was actually one of our clients at the time. And from there, I was invited to join Celerium in a marketing role. And so that's kind of how I got into cybersecurity marketing. So it definitely wasn't direct, but it's been very interesting, and I've been very happy to have the opportunity.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's interesting. It's there is no kind of one true way. It's almost always you start in one place and you end up in another. But from that journey from kind of the political side and advocacy to video production, communications, you've seen uh, different or types of organizations, different size, and kind of from that vantage point, for someone who is looking at cybersecurity marketing as a career, maybe they're junior in their role, maybe they're looking to transition from technology marketing to cybersecurity marketing. What would you advise? What are two, three things in your view they should spend their time on now to set them up for success later?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, the biggest thing is that cybersecurity marketing is never boring, because things are changing all the time. Every time there's a new threat or attack, something changes, right? So there's something that you need to know. So first, I would say, build up your curiosity and love of learning. That's definitely something, especially in the cybersecurity area, that
Mm-hmm.
is very important. And flexibility as well, being willing to be flexible and in marketing in general, that we're always experimenting and there's always new trends and things. So being able to be flexible and experiment with different things is another one. But another thing I would say is that you don't necessarily have to be a technical expert to do well in cybersecurity marketing. You don't have to be able to configure a firewall, for example, or understand how to do threat hunting. But more importantly, it's important to understand why those things are important. Being able to communicate, why is patching important, or why is having a firewall important. That is really how you're going to be able to tell the story, is
Mm-hmm.
connected to the why of an organization. And there's so much out there, so many different things out there, right? So I think where we are now, most companies understand the need for multi-factor authentication and strong passwords, but then what's next from there, and why is that not enough? So just really building up storytelling capabilities, connecting things to the why for a company and explaining just the importance of it, more so than being able to explain how to do it.
Mm-hmm. I understand. It makes a lot of sense. You mentioned some of the things that you work on: events, digital marketing. It seems, to your point, things are always changing in cybersecurity marketing, and sometimes there are certain themes they're playing out. At one point, it was all about large scale events, whether it's Black Hat or RSA, and companies would spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on kind of booth and team on the ground, and then COVID hit, and it was all about virtual roundtables, virtual events. It seems like a couple of years prior to that, it was all about inbound. HubSpot pioneered the concept. Everyone kind of rushed to that space. So it seems like there is always kind of one theme, a certain theme that captures everyone's attention. Now it's AI and how it going to play out, and content generation, and among other things, and how it amplify marketing teams and things like this. However, in the end of the day, it's probably always not a single tool. There are no silver bullets in this business. It's probably always a range of tools in your toolbox. At this point right now, what are some of the tools that produce results for you? What's working?
Yeah, that's a great question. And to your point, back when I was studying public relations and marketing in college, a big focus back then was what was called integrated marketing campaigns. And I think it's, to your point, there's not one silver bullet. You can't just invest completely in events. You can't just invest completely in digital ads. That has to be all working together and integrated, going back to that integrated marketing campaign concept. And to that point, one thing that we've been focused on is how can we really provide value through content that's more thought leadership and helpful than just, content that tries to drive someone to get a demo. Because at the end of the day, with the noise that's out there, with all the companies competing against each other, building trust is really one of the most important things. And so, for example, we've done a series of webinars over the past several months just to talk about topics that are important to a key part of our customer base, which happens to be managed service providers. So we have an MSP channel. And that's been really beneficial because it's been great for us to have FaceTime through these webinars with the potential customers, but also just to talk and show that, hey, we're on your team. We want to help you, whether you buy from us or not. We're going to provide you with some information that's going to help you and your business as you go try to protect your clients from cybersecurity threats. And we've been able to weave that through a lot of different channels. So it's not just marketing the webinar, it's following up with other content pieces that we have, having, and facilitating one-on-one conversations with potential customers or just people who are interested in this type of thing. Digital ads, of course, are part of that, meeting people in person at events for sure, but just being able to really build relationship and trust through something like a webinar or a piece of content or something like that. So that's helped us because, again, it helps us build trust and build rapport. Whereas a lot of times when you're just doing digital ads or you're just doing event marketing and booths, it's very surface level communication. So trying to break through just here's what we do and why you should work with us to, hey, we're in the same boat with you because we're all trying to fight against cyber attacks.
Certainly. And I think it's also frames the conversation in a certain way that it's not a demo, it's not a product conversation, it's a problem conversation. We're providing actionable advice, and there was no ask, there's no link to click to sign on the dotted line, or it's upstream. I would imagine it's probably content that addresses questions and needs of potential clients who are upstream in their customer journey. So there is no immediate ask to transact or give time. So, and I think it's I would imagine it's probably fairly well received because people are very good at discerning intent. So if you don't plan to close them on something, they see it and it's received as value add and is helpful, not as transactional.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's really the key, right? And two things that you said, I want to just reiterate. One is that we're talking about a problem, not a product, right? And so our product might be able to help you solve the problem, but at the end of the day, we also want to talk with you about something that's even bigger than our product, right? Because Celerium we're out there, yes, of course, to help customers, but we're also out there with a higher level calling to help just in the cybersecurity industry in general, and especially in the small and medium business space where a lot of companies don't necessarily have time to think about cyber attacks or anything like that, or really dive deep into it. And then number two is not being transactional, right? Not making everything about a sale. At the end of the day, that can be more off-putting, right? If you just are really focused on just selling, as opposed to relationship building. And then what we've seen is that because we're providing valuable content and because we're building relationships and just talking to people, then they naturally want to hear more from us about what our products and services are. And so it sets us up, and especially our sales team up, to have better conversations with people who are more interested because they know us and have started to build trust with us.
Certainly makes sense. And it creates this kind of surface area where you interact with potential clients in a way that's, I mean, not threatening, probably not the right term, but they don't have their guard up, feeling that they're being pressured into something or manipulated or sold. It creates a different frame for this conversation. One thing that we find, I mean, to your point, you mentioned one thing about cybersecurity marketing, it's always changing. So you're never bored. One thing that we're noticing more and more is that if you think of the customer journey in the past, vendors kind of control a pretty substantial part of it. What's happening now, it seems that there was so much content that's available, it's not gated. And there's so many different communities where peers can interact, and so many private Slack channels. The term that I hear more and more is dark funnels. So essentially conversations that are outside of attribution tools, outside of influence and control of vendors that do happen, obviously, but then this creates this phenomenon where prospects that walk most of the customer journey on their own time, at their own pace. Then you see them typing the company name in Google search and submitting the form. So from your perspective, the attribution is, they found us through Google search, let's invest more in Google search. Meanwhile, this is the end game. This is they stopped at the booth at RSA, they had a quick conversation, but then they met your client at a dinner, they had a side conversation, then ask a question in a private Slack group, and they received an answer from a peer that they respect. Something else happened, and which you may or may not see in all of the attribution and the intent gathering software, but then they show up at your door, hey, we're ready to transact. And how do you think about and again, I think some companies, they try to kind of analyze and assign weights and do the attribution in a very granular way. And other companies, hey, as long as we're creating value and it's ungated, as long as people find it helpful, we're willing to take this laissez-faire approach, knowing that eventually 6 months from now, 12 months from now, this will result in some sort of intent and some sort of pipeline, and they just don't worry about any attribution at all. How do you think about this concept of dark funnels, and how do you think about leveraging or not in the way you do marketing?
Yeah, it's a great question.
Loaded question, I admit, but I'm just curious how you think about it.
It's a great question. And I want to just preface by saying that data, of course, is key to marketers, right? Everything that we do is data driven in some way or another. But I personally take a very balanced approach to it. We've had campaigns, for example, where we've been very much attribution focused, and we want everyone to go through a funnel that we've prescribed, right? So we want you to do this and we want you to do this, and we're going to drive you here from this. What you see though, or at least what I've experienced, is that when you try to have more control, it lessens the value in relationship. And ultimately what we're all driving for is a sale, right? And so it lessens actually the likelihood of a sale if you try to control it too much. So with that, Reddit has actually been something, kind of that dark funnel that you talked about, where technology people or cyber people want to talk amongst themselves, right? They don't necessarily want to spend an hour with a vendor talking about the vendor, right? Because the vendor is going to talk about themselves in a very positive way with very crafted sales language and talk tracks. But, these people, especially our audience, they don't have time for that, right? They just want to know, do you use this product? Do you think that it's helpful? If so, great. And that's why it's so important from my perspective for marketing to be really aligned with customer success, because that sets us up for those kind of longer term, long tail relationship building possibilities like you're talking about, where a customer of ours have such a great experience with us, no matter how they've come, that they're willing to raise their hand and say, yes, we use Celerium, here's what you need to know. And that's ultimately going to be more valuable than us trying to do the long attribution, so I would say a balanced approach to it. I mean, we definitely do the standard, marketing and attribution and all that kind of stuff, but it's not something that we live or die by, I guess. We definitely see the dark funnel things happening and us getting more value out of those people because it has come from a peer recommendation, which is much more valuable than anything that we could do.
Mm-hmm. Certainly. I mean, I think it's a good point that you take all the data you can get, but then you're very judicious in how you apply it, because I mean, it's all about assumptions at the end of the day, right? And as soon as it becomes multi-touch, how do you know that a conversation at RSA was more impactful than a conversation with a Slack channel?
Yeah.
And then introduce time, right? So we believe in this concept of perishability of insight, right? So if something happened a year ago, the impact of it is probably less profound than something that happened yesterday with kind of immediate implications. And then it becomes more of an art than science. I mean, again, it's personal opinion, but it seems we'll probably, where the industry is going, we're probably never going to have exact 100% perfect attribution unless NSA opens up their API, so
Right.
we can see what everyone is doing at any point in time. Great, awesome. So it's interesting. So we brought some of the themes and some of the topics. And one, you mentioned that you interact with sales a lot, and to your point, yes, it's all about content. It's about value. It's about servicing clients. But at the end of the day, the ultimate outcome, and some marketers consider sales team their customers, so they create they're part of the go-to-market motion. But at the end of the day, as long as prospects sign on the dotted line, that's the kind of the final outcome that everyone's driving at. What we find, it's how do you balance, because sales they're kind of like, what can we do now to move the needle for the quarterly numbers, and the quarter is ending in 2 weeks, and the marketing usually responds as well, for this to happen we should have done something a year ago. Right. So it's obviously about alignment at the end of the day, and understanding what they deal with, and understand them, and sales team understanding what marketing is doing. How do you think, what are some of the tactics, some of the best practices in your experience of bringing this alignment, knowing that sales are driven by and incentivized by numbers? It's usually kind of annual goals or quarterly goals, and marketing plays long game, building a relationship and really building demand, and playing in the parts of the customer journey that's really kind of more upstream than I'm ready to buy, I'm ready to sign the dotted line.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the biggest things that marketing has to deal with, right? Is our sales getting the leads that they need to be able to hit those numbers. Absolutely. One thing that we do, because you can't promise anything, right? Like you can't promise anything at all or predict the future. But one thing that we do is actually work really closely with our sales team so that they can have some awareness of, and at the end of the day, even input into what our marketing focus is. So for example, we actually have a weekly meeting with our sales team where we just go through, here's what we're doing. How is it working for you, to get feedback from them? Where are you seeing the best conversations come from? And then what can we do to help just bring more of that into their funnel? And it could be something as simple as explaining that, hey, you know what? Someone happened to find us because they were on a Reddit thread or a Slack channel. And so we were able to drive them directly there because of our SEO or Google ads that we're running, right? And so what can we do to make this better? Or here's a piece of content that we're about to put out that you can use. Let us know in a couple of weeks if it's been something that people have responded to or not. So at the end of the day, you can't really promise anything. You can't guarantee anything, but I think what our sales team appreciates, not to speak on their behalf, but I think is just the ongoing collaboration that we have with them, as opposed to marketing is here, sales is here. We're really intermingled, and we're always talking to each other, always, trying to glean insights from each other. And another thing that has been a little bit unique to Celerium is that we have new solutions that we're putting out into the market for new markets that we haven't been in before. And that's definitely been a good opportunity for collaboration as well, because we're kind of learning together, marketing and sales and customer success, what those people are looking for, what they respond to. And so it just really makes us much more aligned in that way, because we are operating from a shared understanding, as opposed to marketing having this view and sales having this view. Interesting.
It sounds like having this open channel of communication always at all times and being aligned on the goals kind of solves 90% of the 90% of the potential friction that sometimes happens between kind of sales and marketing. So as long as you talk frequently and you understand what the other team is dealing with, and you understand you're in the same boat, rowing roughly in the same direction, I think it's probably the key to avoiding any sort of kind of friction or misunderstanding. Makes a lot of sense. We're coming up on time. Just a couple last questions. If you had a crystal ball, and imagine you have a crystal ball, you can see into the future, how would your life change as a cybersecurity marketer 12 months from now? What are some of the technologies you'll be thinking about? What some of the new or different channels you'll be looking at? What if you think of a cybersecurity marketing newspaper, what are the top headlines 12 months from now?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that it's honestly going to be led by what the threat landscape looks like, because so much of what we do it's not, I wouldn't say it's driven by, but it's definitely impacted by what the big attack has been. Now, I hope that there's not another one, but if you look back at all of the cyber threats that came up during COVID and, what Zoom had to deal with in that scenario, and then the things that are happening just globally that are, physical threats combined with the potential for cyber threats. So that newspaper that you're talking about, I think, is going to be led by, here's where the threat landscape is, and here's how we're responding to it from a content as marketing as well as a product point of view, because the products in cybersecurity they need to change to fit what the threats are. And those threats are always changing based on what the threat actors are doing. So that's one thing. In terms of what technology we're looking at, I think it's really, is there something that has come up that can help you cut through the clutter? We've kind of been through, email marketing was the big thing, and then that became really cluttered. So now we're going to do text messaging. So now do we go back to direct mail? Do we go back to events? But I think in that newspaper, if there was a case study of a cybersecurity marketing team that did really well, it's going to be, they focused on 3 channels, whether that's events, social, whatever, and they did it really well. And they were able to have a really crystal clear message that also helps the customer be able to prevent an attack or identify, a breach that was in process.
Interesting. So it sounds like the first thing that you said, it sounds like some of it seems like, and again, I'm an outsider looking in, it seems like the world is getting more divided, not more unified as we go. And some of those geopolitical risks that we see now, it certainly, it seems like it's pointing towards escalation. Unfortunately, not so much at quieting down. So it's most definitely will play a big role in how this impacts the threat landscape, it sounds like.
Yeah.
And I hear you as well on the channels. I think there's some stories out there that the response rate on email outreach was 100% when they just came out because it was novelty. No one had it, and I think now it's sub 1% and cold outreach. So maybe 12 months from now, everyone will have a Neuralink.
Yeah.
and marketers would pay for read-write access to everyone's brain.
Yeah. So. I hope it doesn't get to that, but it could be.
Eventually, maybe not in 12 months, maybe in a few years. That's great, Lyndsi. Thank you so much for coming on. This was lots of fun. Where can people find you? What's the best way to connect?
Yeah, so I'll spell my name for you. It's Lyndsi, Lyndsi, and you can find me on LinkedIn or Twitter at Lyndsi, M as in Morgan, and then my last name is Stevens, Stevens.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.